I think Julia's supposed. There you go.
Okay, perfect. Always good to remind.
Thank you, because then we have to go through everything again. If we don't,
Right.
you know. And it wouldn't be the first time that somebody's forgotten to press record.
Oh, I know that.
Absolutely.
Much drama.
Yes. Well, we have a lot of drama as a rule, I think, but conversation for another forum.
Another day.
Conversation for another day. So who do we have on? We have Jennifer, Stephanie's on. Great. We'll give a minute to see if Herb calls in.
Okay. Yeah, I just spent 45 minutes on the phone with Optimum, and they said they can't do anything. They'll send somebody tomorrow.
Right.
Yeah. So no TV, no Sonos music. No,
Oh my God, we'll have to talk to each other.
we'll have to actually.
Bob, watch what you say. We are being recorded.
Yeah,
Okay?
yeah.
Yes.
I have an expression, but I won't say it.
Thank you. Rob, we'll stop recording at the end and we'll stay on.
Yeah. I think Optimum owes me a new eardrum because it was blasting music for 45 minutes in my ear on hold. I'm telling you about all their wonderful services.
Right. Except the customer service.
Except the customer service, it's like, you want to pay your $400 bill? No, I said, not today.
You want to order more services? No.
Yeah,
You want to
right.
get pay-per-view? No.
No. I want to be able to turn on my computer and my TV, but whatever.
Guys, we're going to give it till 7:05, then we'll
Okay.
kick it off. Thank you for your
I'm not
patience.
gonna mute myself because I don't know how to do this stuff on the phone. So I'm gonna just leave it on the way it is. Your meetings are not long.
No, we are efficient.
You're very efficient.
We strive for military efficiency in the Veterans Committee meeting.
I appreciate your efforts.
And I'd like to thank Dr. Julia Gomez for hosting it. I had a doctor's appointment, so in downtown, so I didn't make it. I didn't make it all the way up. So I said I'm going to find a parking spot.
Yep, I hear you.
And have the meeting. So Julia's going to be admitting people and such. All right, it's 7:05. We'll call the meeting to order. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Community Board, Bronx Community Board number 8, Special Committee on Veteran Services. I'm Sergio Villaverde, and I am your chair, and we're gonna get the meeting going. We're gonna skip the chair's report and go right down to the presentation. And that way, so we have with us, we have Stephanie Ehrlich, who's we all know her at Cortlandt Park, but so she's always a special guest, but she's a regular participant, so it's hard to call her a guest, so to speak. But we do have Jennifer Lances from the Parks Department. Jennifer, if you could introduce yourself and your title and what you do, and Jennifer's going to give us some feedback on Memorial Grove and what's going on. Thank you, Jennifer.
No, thank you so much for having me this evening. I really appreciate it. I'm Jennifer Lances. I'm the Deputy Director of Art and Antiquities at the New York City Parks Department. We essentially at Art and Antiquities have our hands in a couple of different things. What I predominantly do is oversee the care of the city's monument and permanent art collection. In addition to that, we oversee the commissioning of new artworks, as well as kind of monument policy. We also have a temporary art program that's artworks that have been installed in parks for less than a year, predominantly working with local contemporary artists. We also have a gallery in the Arsenal, which is our headquarters in Central Park. And then we're also responsible for all of the historical content on our parks that largely takes the form of historical signs. So if you're familiar with the Grove, there's actually like a historical sign there as you enter the space. So our office is responsible for generating, editing, managing that content. So if there are no questions just in general about the Art and Antiquities office, our very small, mighty, unusual office in the Parks Department, I'm happy to dive into the Memorial Grove. Any questions though, generally?
When you say that there's signage that's under your auspices in Memorial Grove, what specifically are you talking about, Jennifer?
So there is, in addition to the identification, which are, kind of the larger sign that says, Memorial Grove on it, there is complementary signage. It's about 12 by 18. And it's language at both the rail fencing entrances that has the history of the Grove, kind of how it came to be, just general information on it, how it was restored, and just kind of the veneration of the space. So if someone kind of happens upon this and doesn't know anything about the Grove, they're given context.
Ah, okay.
Very good.
Awesome.
Thank you.
So I don't know that I need to like go into a history of this. I can kind of, because everyone here is probably, to be honest, more familiar with the Grove than myself in terms of spending physical time in that space. But I'm happy to just do like a very brief overview also of the restoration of the space that happened in 2012, just to give everyone some background and make sure we're all on the same page.
I think that background would be good. And if we could include the most recent additions and the history, the background of that, I think that would bring us up to speed to where we are today.
Absolutely. So the Memorial Grove, it was actually designed in 1949 by the Parks Department, along with the Peter Lehman Post, number 8646. At that time, the Memorial Grove honored the men who died in World War II. And all of these memorial plaques were planted with corresponding oak trees. There are varying kinds of oak trees, but oaks nonetheless. That was 21 plaques to our knowledge that were installed. And we know that because it did go to what's now called the Public Design Commission, which then was called the Art Commission. So anytime there's a monument, a memorial, or a permanent artwork, to be honest, any change in the design of any of our parks, it goes to what's called the Public Design Commission. And they're the overseeing body of individuals that work out of the mayor's office that vet all proposals on city property that have to do with kind of artwork and memorials. So at that time,
they're not Parks Department.
Nope, they are a different city agency that's with the mayor's office.
Okay, thank you.
So we have their proposal from 1949, which included 21 plaques. To be honest, we don't have, and we have never been able to find confirmation that the plaques that were proposed at that time were the only ones that went in. That being said, usually they're pretty accurate in terms of the proposal to the as-built, but we don't know for certain. Then between 1949 and 1974, approximately 18 additional markers were added, but without Parks's knowledge or approval or going to the Art Commission. And it was in 1974 that someone from our office actually went to the Grove and hand wrote the identifying information of all of the plaques that remained on site. At that time, we also determined, we kind of started to track it a little bit from what I understand, but we found that many markers were stolen, removed, and dislodged just between like this 1974 and the 1980s. So we don't actually know for sure the ultimate number that existed at any given time, because it seems that there were regularly markers being removed, stolen, recreated, or new ones being installed. It's a little herky-jerky, to be honest. Of the markers that were installed between the 1949 originals and the later 1974 survey, we do know that in addition to the World War II vets that were already in the park, that there were some Korean vets included within the new markers that hadn't gone reviewed. So ultimately that kind of brings us to 2012. There had been kind of continued advocacy from the community to restore the site, both like from a horticultural and like park care perspective, as well as the markers themselves. So at that time, all of the existing plaques were removed. That was about, I want to say it was like 21 plaques existed at that time, give or take. They were removed from the plaques themselves, were removed from the granite bases, and then they were essentially, they had a lot of them had been pried off in years past, so they were warped. So hydraulic presses were used to straighten them. They were stripped of their coating, they were repatined, and then recoated, and then reattached to new granite bases. And then based on a lot of research, the missing, or what we could determine were missing plaques were recreated, and how that was done was a combination of the 1974 survey as well as the original Art Commission application. Once those were kind of reconciled with one another, it ended up being 39 plaques that we knew at some point had existed in the park. So all of those missing plaques were recreated, also placed on granite bases. At that time, we did an assessment. So all of the existing plaques went back to where they were originally from. If we didn't have any record of where a plaque was originally located, it was cited on, and then it also got a new tree, a new oak tree. Because all of the plaques are associated with a tree. So then that brings us to, and like at that time, we kind of considered like the Grove complete, I guess you could say. Like we had from a historical perspective, from a conservation perspective, the Grove had been completed, but we did receive advocacy for an additional plaque that was put in 2018. I think we were approached, I don't know the exact, I think it was maybe in 2016, 2017 that the conversation occurred. But there was advocacy for putting in a marker that honored the men and women of the Bronx who fought in Vietnam. So that plaque actually doesn't even necessarily delineate the individuals who had passed during that conflict. It's to anyone who participated in that. So we made that allowance, and we kind of came to a decision that really we wouldn't be adding individuals. And this kind of started the discussion kind of started after the 2012 restoration, because like I said, from a conservation perspective, the Grove was quote unquote like restored and complete. But we did see the value in honoring those from the community, because really the Grove had taken on a larger meaning by that point, right? It had a larger representation of the veterans from the neighborhood and all of those who had been lost. So we did see the value in acknowledging those who participated in Vietnam, because it was a larger representative group. The reason why we decided not to do individuals moving forward is because, to be honest, it's very complicated. To honor one individual essentially means you would have to honor all individuals that meet the same criteria. And, you know, we haven't done the research to determine how many that is. I assume it's not insignificant. And to be perfectly frank, there is a finite amount of space in the Grove, and if you honor one individual and not someone else, why not that individual? And so it's kind of a regularly occurring issue actually with our park system. that when you start trying to name all the names, there's only so much space. Memorials are very, they're set in stone per se. Like, for example, we just installed a monument to Vietnam veterans in Queens in Elmhurst Park. And, thankfully we left a lot of space at the end of the honor roll. It listed all of those from the community that died in Vietnam, because almost immediately after it was complete, we were getting calls, even though it had been very rigorously researched by members for years. And we worked with the local Queens VA, and inevitably there were names missed, there were names that were misspelled, there were, and then you're dealing with stone. It's so hard to manage. But anyways, so there's a finite amount of space with a possibly, depending on the definition, infinite number of individuals from the neighborhood who may or may die in a conflict. The number of trees, it's a beautiful grove. They have very substantial root beds, and to place more markers as well as more trees just presents a lot of complication in terms of maintaining the health of the existing trees. One thing that I guess if there was an unusually large amount of time that someone had, one thing that was kind of interesting is in all of our research, we were never able to actually define the geographic standards that were followed to select the individuals in the original 21 plaques and the subsequent additions. So it's really unclear whether new individuals that would be proposed for this site would even technically qualify. What are the boundaries of the neighborhood? Who is eligible and who is not, and why? And because we don't have that definition, that just makes it far more complicated. And then something that's slightly less problematic, but still something that we take into account, is that there is a general rhythmic design to the plaque placement and tree placement in the space. So depending on if you were to add many plaques, because many individuals have since passed since the Vietnam or since World War II or Korea, it really disrupts the flow of the space. So we did determine that based on all of these complicated issues, that we are open to including and adding plaques to representative groups moving forward. So whether that is to individuals, in the Gulf War or current conflicts, that we are totally open to, but individuals, it becomes very complicated. That being said, one caveat would be if someone did a lot of research and they were able to identify plaques that were part of the original 1949 installation that were missed just because of our inability to find that information, we would have those individuals because they were part of the original set, and we just lost the content over time. But that would be kind of a unique situation. I'm happy to go into now the actual proposal aspect of how one would go about submitting and the process and the reviews that goes through. But before I do that, I was wondering if there are any questions about kind of the history up until this point.
That seemed pretty thorough.
Okay,
Pretty
awesome.
For a quick overview.
Sorry.
No. Thank you.
So for people who are interested in submitting for a new tree marker at this site, essentially you would submit a proposal, either hard copy or via email to myself or someone in our office, and I can share that information. But essentially what the proposal would say is, what are you proposing that the plaques say? Where is the location, ideally, that you would envision this plaque being located? And then the justification, for why we should be adding this additional plaque and why it's important. So fairly straightforward information, to be honest. One thing that is unique about this site and a lot of kind of groves or tree marker memorials is there's a design standard that's been created for all of the plaques to ensure that they're all relatively uniform. And that's the case with this site. So while, text can vary, the actual visuals of the plaque would need to follow those of the rest of the site. So for example, the bronze plaques are 7x10 and the granite bases are 14x12. There's a certain type of a font and font size. So there are very specific, I could go into the details, it's very dull. You need Arno Pro to like font, and the name of the individual or the group that's being honored needs to be in 42 point typeface, where all the other text is in 36 point typeface and things like that.
So-
But we would
so-
work essentially.
So Jennifer, I think we got that there are three things that the request would have.
Mhm.
What's requested, the justification, the proposed location.
Mhm.
I mean, if a group or us us in combination with somebody else or whatever group,
Mhm.
would your office be able to assist with the third one?
The third one, you mean the justification?
No, the
Sorry.
placement.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We would be
I mean,
able
like
to.
if this is a concept that we came up with, this is the reason why we believe it's important, but you guys are the experts.
Yeah, and what we would do, I mean, essentially that is judged like in consultation with the Parks Department, because of course we would say these areas are more appropriate because you don't have to be concerned about existing tree roots, et cetera. But sometimes people do have just like a personal opinion of where they would ideally like to see placement. And so it's good for us to know, just, if there are personal or very, justified in terms of historic reasons why a certain location is preferred over others. But we at the Parks Department would work with the organization or individuals making the proposal to identify what is logistically feasible and makes sense.
So if a group had a strong, 1 and 2,
Mhm.
the third, being a little more vague.
Yeah, that's more of like
It would be
a
okay.
conversation. Mhm.
Right, okay.
Yeah, it's more just so that we know, because sometimes groups or individuals that come to us with ideas for memorials or markers are very set on like a very specific location. And it's just good for us to know beforehand, before starting that conversation, if that feeling is there.
Right,
So that we're
right.
not like, wasting time on everyone's behalf if the site isn't feasible.
Okay.
Um,
Does anyone have any questions for Jennifer so far?
I think Rob is speaking, but I think you're on mute.
Wait for this.
Star 6.
No, here,
We can
okay.
hear you now.
We can hear you now.
Okay, you can hear me now.
Mhm.
Maybe. But anyway, back to a site. And try to sort it out, Sergio.
I'm sorry, you're breaking up a little bit.
Okay, I don't know why. I've never done it on phone before, so I have no. Oh, there we go. I got a thing. So I got the video. I'm not muted. I don't know why.
We lost the video, but okay.
Okay.
You'll have to email.
Yeah. I'll email with you, Sergio.
Now you're good, Rob.
I'm good. Oh, I think I know what it is. I had my finger over the.
Rob, stop touching the phone. You're good.
Okay.
Okay.
So, yeah, well, we'll look at it. We got to go look and see it, what the spacings are, and is there a spot that would look good that we could suggest? And if they don't like it, they'll put it where they think it should go.
Concur. 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 I mean, I get this. I've gotten the sense from our conversations in the groups that we're flexible on the exact place. The conversation was going to be more around the parameters that Stephanie has, that Jennifer has set. And I think this is, Stephanie, do you have anything different? Anything?
Sorry. No, I guess I'm just curious, who you're thinking of. You had not mentioned that to me.
Well, we originally had been thinking about individuals, but now, the groups will have a conversation about having it be a group, if that's something that works for everyone, and we're not going to advocate for something else. But obviously I think it's an easy way to do it is that the VA has defined conflicts and groups that were in conflicts because they get varying benefits by law on it. So I think it would be easy enough to find, Operation, Iraqi Freedoms or the other conflicts that we've had that are recognized conflicts. We don't really need to reinvent the wheel on those. So that's I guess if that would be where my head would be if we're doing groups instead of individuals.
I think it's nice to represent who's not represented there.
Yeah.
To update it.
But.
Oh, yeah.
Would we
Yes,
put
Laura.
all the groups on one plaque or several plaques? That's what I'm.
So I think it depends on what, like what the defined conflicts are, like whether, and this is where I'm just not particularly well versed when it comes to how like the VA handles these things. I think if they were very distinctly separate, conflicts in the sense that they are different wars, different time periods, different locations, that makes sense to have different plaques, right? Like you're not going to have like the Gulf Wars listed with, current, kind of more current things. So I think it just depends on the definition of conflicts, if that makes sense.
Right.
Like if there are a series of
Yeah.
conflicts that have been associated with one war, then I think it makes sense to have those on one. But if it's, completely separate conflicts, then I think it
Right,
makes
I
sense
think-
to have.
Right. I think
different
we'd
ones.
have to, research that and take a look at it. Yeah, those parameters make sense. Anyone else have anything questions for Jennifer or comments?
Jennifer,
happy-
did I hear that this goes through the Public Design Commission, or that's from the past?
Yep, no, it still does. We regularly work with the Public Design Commission though, so the process is luckily not as painful as it used to be, I guess you could say.
Okay.
And because there is essentially a standardization here, this isn't necessarily like a contemporary artwork and, you're
Right.
creating, like, these are plaques that are of a certain size, essentially it's all about what the language would be on the plaques and locations. I can go over the review. Essentially, once the proposal is submitted to us, we review it internally just to make sure it meets our monuments criteria. And Sergio, I sent you like that very long, the link to the website that has like a lot of stuff in it. But essentially that it meets the criteria that I've just explained to you now. It goes to our parks design and in-house reviews, and that's essentially like our capital team and our designers. They just for awareness so that they can weigh in if they have any just design feedback, because oftentimes they actually strengthen a proposal along the way, or they say, this is great, you did a great job, move along. From there, it's the commissioner's review, and so that would be Commissioner Donahue at this point. And essentially, we're sharing to her for her knowledge. But essentially, if we're bringing something to her, it means that it's been vetted and like essentially the Parks Department is advocating for it and just wants her blessing. From there, it's past all of our internal reviews. It goes to the local community board before it goes to the Public Design Commission, which wouldn't be an issue here. Sometimes people get very nervous about that. And then once we've gotten the community board resolution, it goes to the Public Design Commission. They hold every month, they accept applications, and then it's about 4 weeks after the application that the item is put on the agenda for a meeting. Because of the regularity of the design of the site in terms of like, these are tree plaques, it would essentially follow the same design format. I anticipate that this would just be on their consent agenda, which means all of the commissioners that are on the panel of the design commission would review this beforehand and just say, yeah, like, we're good with this, and it wouldn't actually have to be given as a live presentation at a public design commission meeting. That's primarily saved for kind of newly designed contemporary permanent works
Right.
and things that are more complicated. And it also, typically we have 3 design commission reviews. One is conceptual, which is like the idea. One is preliminary, which is like essentially the drawings right when you're ready to go to fabrication, and then the final review. But because, again, this is a uniform design throughout and it's more the content, the conceptual and the preliminary will likely just be combined. So there's only the one, I anticipate it would only be the one design review. So once PDC signs off, essentially we would go into the installation. And then from there, you know, there's celebration or public events, press, however, you know, it's all coordinated in consultation with Parks. And then we at the Parks Department submit to the Design Commission for a final review, but that's honestly just like submitting photos to prove that we did what we said we were going to do. And so that process,
right.
that
So I-
process,
Right.
sorry.
Now, I have a practical question about
Yeah.
that space. I'm sorry to interrupt. So if we were to get all of our stakeholders together, you know, people who are, you know, who've been the advocates and we said, okay, we'd like this, we'd send it over.
Mhm.
We would get it approved before we order the item.
Yeah, that's correct. And
Right.
essentially we would work with, and typically what we do, like once our office feels comfortable with the what's being proposed, we can make a recommendation, because of course the financing of the fabrication as well as the installation is something that is the responsibility of the group that's proposing. It's not something that Parks is able to provide. But we do have a lot of different companies that we are able to, we send a list and say, like, you know, we, as a city agency, we can't tell you who to use, but we can say, these are companies that we've worked with very successfully and do a really good job. And then we would work with you, whoever the fabricator is that you select, and we all kind of finalize that data in terms of like, they'll
Okay.
make them into drawings and they'll want specs on the patina and stuff like that.
Right.
We
Okay.
would consult with that with you.
Good. So we don't have to have that process. So that's the end process.
Mhm.
Because we wouldn't have to waste money on something that's not approved.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Anyone
And
else
to be
have-
honest, like normally I would say, like, you know, the review process is a lengthy one for completely new memorials. But I would say it's probably very feasible to do this within the calendar year. Like from the time that we get the proposal, I would say. I mean, that is me being very optimistic, I think, but because it is a uniform design that's followed, and it would just be like what the plaques say, making sure that you know, I think that is something that would be doable within the calendar year from the proposal date.
Gotcha. Anyone else have any?
It's the research, I think, that's going to be the more complicated process.
Thank you for
Yeah,
the fabulous presentation. You may have covered this. I got knocked off. What is the timeline from the time you receive a proposal? Just typically, what is the timeline through the Public Design Commission and, you know, any other steps that need to be taken typically?
Yeah. I mean, in terms of once we get the proposal, then it usually takes, for something like this, for a tree plaque, I wouldn't just keep in the back of your mind, I'm speaking specifically to this project. For other things, it would be much longer process. But because these are tree plaques, essentially, once we got a proposal, it would probably be, you know, a couple of months of back and forth with us and you guys in terms of like, if you're proposing a group, you know, we'll want to see kind of the research that you've done, and we'll have to finesse maybe some language and make sure everyone comes to an agreement on exactly the language that's being used. And then usually we go from there. The Parks Design Commission or design and in-house reviews happen kind of around every week, sometimes like every month. So add another month for that. Commissioners review is once a month, add a month for that. Community board, it can actually go simultaneously to the community board and the Public Design Commission at the same time. Just with the knowledge that like ultimately the resolution will go to the Public Design Commission perhaps later, because the way the calendar falls, sometimes the community board, you don't want to add another month of waiting just to get to the community board to submit the resolution to PDC, depending on their submission dates. PDC is a month. And then from there, for plaque fabrication, the way that the fabricators this might be the kind of like the slowest point, just because it all depends on like the fabricator's timeline. They usually don't take terribly long, usually like several months. But there's been kind of some unique trials and tribulations with, just in terms of like material supply and supply chain issues and stuff like that. But that's usually at like several months. Installation, if it's like for one plaque, that's like a 1-day operation for the actual installation. So like I was saying, essentially I would say and this is, a total estimate, but like a calendar year from the time of proposal, if what you're proposing is kind of in line with what I've just discussed. If suddenly, we're approached with a proposal for adding 40 new individual plaques, that would throw us off quite considerably from that timeline. But if you're looking at groups and, you're looking at, one or a couple of plaques, my best estimate is within the calendar year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right. Any other questions or comments?
I think that we would need to go there and see how many characters are on the plaque,
Mhm.
with the letters and the spaces between, so we would know that's the limitation.
Yeah, and we
we
have
discussed.
all of those plaques transcribed, so I could actually, it wouldn't be tomorrow, but perhaps next week or the following, once I've crunched those numbers. I think we have that somewhere in terms of like what the average word count is for those plaques to help give you a general idea of what has
Great.
worked.
And the plaques themselves are also on the park's website. So
Mhm.
Oh,
so we have access to the, when you look at the park's website, you'll also see the plaque. So that would be very helpful, Jen, because I'd like to forward that to our stakeholder on this. All right. Any other questions or comments for Jennifer?
I have a quick question.
Stephanie, sorry.
That's okay. I have a quick question for Jennifer. Jennifer,
Yeah.
when you say within the calendar year, I just want to make sure I'm understanding. It sounded to me
Sorry.
like it was 12 months from start to finish.
Yes,
right?
I didn't mean calendar year. Yes, it's 1 year from the time of proposal. I keep saying calendar year, but
Okay, thank
that's
you.
because I'm caught in talking fiscal years and calendar years all the time. So
So 12 months.
12 months from that, but
Okay.
I think that would be like a generous time allotment.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure
Yeah,
that
I appreciate. I actually, when I was listening to you guys, I was like, I've been saying calendar year, but I don't know that I should step in and correct myself.
It's a bad city employee habit, right?
Yeah.
Calendar year, fiscal years, yeah. Okay, great. Jennifer, thank you very much for the presentation. We appreciate you having come down for this. If you could forward us the information, you've been very generous with forwarding it, and I've sent it to our stakeholders. I want to keep doing that
Mhm.
so that we have an idea of where we're going. And thank you
Yep.
so much.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate chatting with all of you.
I can't wait to see you at the Grove.
I'll be there.
Great
All
presentation.
right, November 5th is our Memorial Day ceremony, so you can save the date.
all right.
Will do.
I have it saved.
All right, guys, thank you. So we'll thank you very much. We'll go back to our agenda. Very briefly, you've all gotten the minutes from our last meeting,
Mhm.
and unless there are any corrections, I'll accept the motion to approve the minutes.
I'll move.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Rob. Seconded. Okay. Any abstentions? Any opposition? Okay, the minutes are passed unanimously. Thank you. And as far as some of the items that have gone on, the office, and Laura may have noticed, I've been sending some items to put on our website from the VA.
Yes.
I'm gonna speak to Marty, to Law Rules and Ethics. I'm pretty certain that the VA does not have a problem with us republishing what they publish. But in an overabundance of prudence, I want to make sure that we're okay with that, because they have a lot of good information and we don't really need to reinvent the wheel. So I'm gonna run that past Marty just to see if they're, make sure
think
that
it's
we're
important.
issues.
I think it's just important to credit the source, and then that's what people do when they take information from an organization. As long as you credit the source,
Right.
yeah.
Right,
But-
yeah, we credit the source, but also we've been, I've been asking people to just, I've been asking us to just post to forward the link and the actual webpage, so that we're, the office doesn't have to rewrite what the VA's already done, that sort of thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. So I have nothing else for the chair's report. Do we have any other? And Memorial Grove was going to be the main topic of business for today, and I believe we've covered that with the presentation. Any old business? Any new business?
Chair Villaverde, I don't know if you wanted to talk about the discussion we had regarding a merger.
Oh, yes, thank you, Dr. Gomez. We received an email, I'm sure many of us have, about there was who was it who sent it?
Lisa,
Lisa,
yeah,
about potentially merging committees, including merging what we cover into a new standing committee that would cover a lot of different areas. I thought it was, a worthwhile idea, certainly to consider and discuss. It would vitiate the need for a special committee appointment, and the issues would, it would be constituted as part of that committee's mission, to discuss, to address veterans issues. And what do we think?
There would be much longer meetings.
I'll stop. What was the committee that she proposed, Julia, veterans merge with?
She proposed that veterans, youth, and aging merge to form, since they're the three committees that kind of, instead of dealing more with New York City agencies, really deal more with people in terms of services and overlapping with a lot of the centers with, serving all three of these populations, that if they were to form one committee, it would, have a larger mandate, and also, in terms of people power and committee commitments, it would concentrate those efforts. And I believe it was also taking point on all of the community service awards and those types of things. While there would still be those for, I know the parks can normally nominate someone, they still would. It would just be housed in, I can't remember what she proposed the committee to be called.
Yeah, she had a name, but it's something that may come up. We're not going to vote on anything this evening, but I do thank Dr. Gomez for bringing it up, because I think it's something we should start thinking about. Does it make more sense? The meetings will be different. The meetings will be longer. Are we going to get lost in the shuffle, or is it going to be something that we're permanently part of the discussion? So that was more of a food for thought. Thank you, Dr. Gomez, for bringing that up under new business, because it is. And all right, any other new business? Okay. Thank you. Seeing none. You accept the motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Thank you. Seconded. See you guys all soon. We can
See you
stop
soon.
record. We can stop recording.
Yeah.
Thank
Wait,
you.
Rob, wait, wow, Rob, wait,
Wait, hold on, wait for me to finish. Just stop recording.
Oh.
wait, Rob.